Okay, now, where do we start from? You take the Bible. Let me make it more personal. Your daughter, your son, picks up the Bible to read, and they ask a question. Who produced this and when? Where should I start reading the text from? When we pick up books, we start reading from the first page. I don't think that is a good place to start reading the Bible. We have to.
Well, Ray, Christianity, they start in the book of John, so I don't think you want us to start there.
No, John is too late. When we pick up the Bible, we cannot start from Genesis. We have to start from the middle. So we have to ask these questions. Who produced the Bible and when? What happened in the lives of these people that caused them, unlike any of their neighbors, to preserve their history in writing and successfully pass that history down from generation to generation? What happened? So the text is about the ancient Israelites. Hey, I'm trying to qualify that statement. That's why I paused.
Okay.
There we go.
Answer this one first.
Mr. D, yes.
You made a statement, but you didn't give us the answer. Where is the middle? Is that Psalms? Is that Job or someplace else?
Yes, very good question. Very good question. I'm going to answer that very shortly. Very good question. So, since we're talking about the Israelites, the question would be, what happened in the lives of the ancient Israelites that caused them, unlike any of their neighbors, to preserve their history in writing and successfully pass that history down from generation to generation? Because that is going to inform us on how to successfully read the text or how to look at the text. So we have to start a study somewhere in the middle of the Bible with Psalms 137. Psalms 137 reads, "By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat. We also wept when we remembered Zion. On willows in its midst, we hang our harps. For there our captors asked us for words of song, and our tormentors asked us for mirth. Sing for us of the song of Zion." Verses 4. "How shall we sing the song of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh on foreign soil? If I forget you, O Jerusalem, may my right hand forget its skill," that is the skill to play the harp. "May my tongue cling to my palate if I do not remember you. If I do not bring up Jerusalem at the beginning of my joy. Remember, O Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, for the sons of Edom, the day of Jerusalem, those who say, raise it down to its foundation. O daughter of Babylon, who is destined to be plundered, praiseworthy is he who repays you your recompense that you have done to us. Praiseworthy is he who will take and dash your infants against the rock." This psalm here describes the period known as the Babylonian exile. This is where we need to start from, because this is what triggered and shaped the text as we have it today. These were the words of the song that I was playing in the morning when we began the class. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat, yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. The Babylonian captivity starts 597 BCE and continues. So it actually begins 597, but the destruction happens 586. Say that. This is when Babylonia conquered Judah and Jerusalem and deported many of the people to Babylonia. It was after this national defeat and crisis that many of the books of the Bible were compiled, edited, and shaped into a library. The collection of stories, this statement is important, seemed designed to respond in some way to the realities of being an exiled people. The statement is critical. Let me pause and ask this question. If you were giving me a narrative, one, when you're sitting in your land free, and the other scenario, when you're sitting in somebody's land in exile, will the narration or the narrative be the same?
Absolutely not.
No.
No.
Which of the narrative, as a reader, would you prefer to read if you have both narrative? One written when you're setting your land free, and then one written from exile. Which one would you want to
read? Free.
Why?
Exile would have more passion.
Oh.
I'd rather read the one when they were free.
You would want to read it from the free standpoint because you don't need to elaborate or put things into the text when you're free, versus when you're captured, you might want to put things in there that make you seem more zealous than what you are.
Give us free.
I'd like both because you need both sides.
I think the one in your homeland would be more joyful and triumphant, and maybe like you're stronger because you weren't overtaken and sent into exile.
Correct.
And plus, the one when you're free is not going to be probably full of extra curricular activities that probably really didn't happen. You embellish a little bit more.
Correct. Which one will be more interesting, though?
The exile is much more interesting.
Correct. So it looks like we are all on the same page. So now I've brought you to Babylonia, and they're going to start to produce material. And the collection of materials that they produce, the stories that are told, seem designed to respond in some way to the realities of being an exiled people. The community that chose which stories to preserve and how to arrange them was the exilic community, those that came to call themselves or see themselves as the remnant of Israel. It was the one tribe that survived and came back to Canaan, the south. The tribe that survived told the story.
Oh, Moray, this sounds like this is exactly what Yah told Elijah not to do, not to think that you're the only one. And it seems like this is the actual
Correct.
attitude that they took. They were the only one.
I agree. Yes. But mind you, what we haven't understood, it wasn't everybody that was taken to exile. Actually, let me not go ahead of myself. I'll come there. So I will paint a picture and then I'll come there and I'll say something. Because it wasn't that everybody agreed across the board, even in the South. We'll come to that shortly. So the exilic community, those who had gone into exile, they are the ones telling the story. They are the ones that returned with the book. So the tribe that survived and returned to the land told the story. The North, they did survive as well. Those that we argue can be found on the west coast of West Africa, on the west of West Africa, and not only the west, you can find them in the east, south, north, they are all over the place. They did not return to the land, though they also survived. But they did not return to the land, so they are not the focus. We wished, or we hoped, and we still hope, I don't know whether it's going to be possible, if they had also written something, would it have been different? We don't have that. So let's not focus on them. Let's focus on those who came back. Those who came back with the form of a Torah. Those who compiled it, fashioned it, shaped it to what we have today. What happened during the exile? Where did it start from? We read it. Very short narrative. In 2 Kings 25. And it was in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, on the 10th of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonian, came, he and his entire army, against Jerusalem, and encamped against it. And they built works of siege around it. I'm not going to go into the war tactics of the Babylonians and then the Assyrians. That is for another class in the series. So we'll look at that. And the city came under siege until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. On the 9th of the month, the famine became severe in the city, and the people of the land had no food. The city was broken into, and all the men of war fled at night by way of the gate between the two walls that was near the king's garden. And the Chaldeans were surrounding the city. And he went by way of the Arabah. And the army of the Chaldeans pursued the king, and they overtook him on the plains of Jericho. And all his army had scattered and deserted him. And they seized the king, or they seized the king, and brought him up to the king of Babylonia, to Riblah, and called him to account. And they slaughtered Zedekiah's sons before his eyes. So he's looking, and they kill his sons so that memory will be etched into his brain, his heart. After that, they blinded Zedekiah's eyes. They gouged his eyes out. And he bound him with copper chains and brought him to Babylon. And in the 5th month, on the 7th of the month, Nebuchadrezzar, chief executioner, servant of the king of Babylonia, came to Jerusalem, and he burnt the house of Yudhe-Vavhe and the king's palace, and all the houses of Jerusalem, and all the houses of the dignitaries he burnt with fire. The entire army of the Chaldeans that was with the chief executioner demolished the walls of Jerusalem around. And Nebuchadrezzar, the chief executioner, exiled the remnant of the people who remained in the city. And the defectors who defected to the king of Babylonia and the rest of the populace. Now the chief executioner left over some of the poorest of the land as vine dressers and farmers. And the Chaldeans broke the copper pillars that were in the house of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, and the bases and the copper seat that was in the house of Yud-Heh-Vav-Heh, and they carried off their copper to Babylon. And they took the pots and the shovels and the musical instruments and the spoons and all the copper vessels with which they served. So this military defeat and national displacement served as a catalyst for the collection and editing of the nation's history. Among those that were deported were the elite. He had the scribes, the priests, the nobles. What would the Judeans have seen? They would have seen family members killed in war. They would have seen the killing of the king's sons and the gouging of the king's eyes. They would have seen their homes burnt and sacred sites looted. They will find themselves in a long line of deportees traveling to an unknown land. They would have traveled from Jerusalem towards the north into Syria. Then they will cross southern Turkey, then south along the Euphrates River into Babylonia. That is an 800-mile journey. 800 miles. And they are walking. The roads they would have traveled would have been about 3 to 4 meters wide. This would be a long, slow journey because it included the elderly, children, women, pregnant women. Many would have died along the way. Upon arrival, they will find themselves in a land very different from their own, surrounded by a people who spoke a foreign language and worshipped foreign gods. And much of what we read in the Bible speaks to this horrific displacement of the Judeans in exile. And the Psalms that we read, Psalms 137, which was likely written during the Babylonian exile, is one of the few places where we can eavesdrop to get a description of exilic life. Let's eavesdrop like we did with Elijah.